Good afternoon, everyone. House is going to go into session in the next few minutes, and so I'm going to have to head over to close on this monstrosity of a tax bill that gives 50% of the benefits to the top 1% and 80% of the benefits to the top 2% at the expense of the middle class. Last night, the House Senate Finance Committee unanimously rejected the House Republican tax scam, 26-0. In a few minutes, House Republicans will have to decide whether they will chain themselves to this poisonous middle-class tax hike that is dead on arrival in the Senate. The American people are watching, and the American people will hold the Republicans accountable for their decisions for this tax scam. For days, Speaker Ryan and Senator McConnell have told the American people that the Republicans propose a tax cut for everyone. Oh, really? Oh, really? Tell that to the families with family member with Alzheimer's, or a family with a child with disabilities, or with expensive fertility treatments. The list goes on and on. Tell that to a family that is going to lose their medical deduction on their taxes. We had a press conference in San Francisco last Friday in a firehouse on talking about state and local taxes. But one of our friends who was there spoke about the medical expense tax deduction that would be lost. She's in her 80s, her husband late 80s. He has Alzheimer's. Their costs are enormous in terms of addressing her husband's Alzheimer's. They only make ends meet because of this tax deduction. And she said, I can't understand the cruelty behind this action. Cruel it is. So again, tell that to students and graduates who can't deduct student loan. Interest on student loans, $2,500. Student loan deduction, they're eliminating. Why? To give tax breaks to their rich friends. Tell that to a teacher who buys supplies for school and can't deduct that. Why? It's always about why, so they can give tax breaks to their rich friends. And tell that to the hardworking Americans being double taxed after the state and local tax deduction is dismantled. The GOP tax scam is a perfect reflection of the priorities of the Republican Congress, racing to raise taxes on 36 million class families. That is according to the Nonpartisan Tax Policy Center. And the bill is only growing more monstrous in the Senate. The Republicans in the House are saying, well, I'm just voting for it. I know it doesn't have all good things, but it's just to move the process along. This will be corrected in the Senate. Oh, really? Today, now, the Joint Committee on Taxation put forth this just within the past 2 hours. Senate tax bill cuts taxes of the wealthy and hikes taxes on families earning under $75,000. Senate's going to make this better. With Republicans adding the destruction of the Affordable Care Act to their bill in the Senate, the fight to defeat the GOP tax scam is now a life-or-death struggle for millions of American families. Republicans will raise taxes on tens of millions of middle-class families, as I mentioned, explode the ranks of the uninsured by 13 million, and spike premiums for Americans with pre-existing conditions. Thank you, Republicans in the Senate and now the House. Republicans want you to believe that their trickle-down tax breaks for the rich will pay for themselves. Never have. They say they're going to create jobs and pay for themselves. Neither is true. They never have. As Bruce Bartlett, architect of Jack Kemp's supply-side economics, said, in terms of tax breaks paying for themselves, it's not true. It's nonsense. It's BS. That's what he said. I mean, he said the whole word. The people deserve better, a real bipartisan permanent tax reform. This isn't tax reform. It's not even a tax cut. It's a tax scam. Why don't we go to the table, has been done in the past, in a bipartisan way, sit down, listen to testimony as to what works and what doesn't work and what really creates good-paying jobs by creating growth, and in doing so, reducing the deficit as we prepare our families for the 21st century jobs. Democrats believe that the American people deserve better, than the Republican tax scam. A better deal, better jobs, better pay, a better future. We are investing in creating good-paying jobs and raising workers' wages, lowering the cost of living for families, and giving Americans the tools to succeed for the 21st century. Today, we unveiled a better deal on pensions. Perhaps some of you were there, protecting the promise of retirement security for workers who did everything right. They worked their lifetime, they paid into the pensions, and now there's a threat that those promises would be broken as to their receiving their pensions. As we head into Thanksgiving, as families come together in gratitude and prayerfulness, the Congress of the United States should not be pillaging the future for big corporations and the rich. What's interesting to me is that Gary Cohen said the people are those who are the most excited about the Republican tax bill are big corporate CEOs. Lindsey Graham said financial contributions will end if they don't pass this bill. Chris Collins said, the donors said to him, if you don't pass this bill, don't call us. What is this? This is about their donors. It's not about the American people. It's not about our future. It's a terrible bill, and I'll have more to say about it on the floor of the House, but I just wanted to share some thoughts with you on it. Any questions? Yes, sir.
On DACA,
yes, sir.
We've seen comments both from President Trump and Speaker Ryan that they don't want to do it as part of the U.S. spending bill, suggesting that they'd like to push it into next year. You have said that that's kind of a non-starter with the Democrats.
Yes.
How do you see this playing out? Is there 13 legislative days left? You don't really have time for a standalone bill, so how does this work?
Well, that's it. We're saying, show us the bill. We have been waiting. We visited in October, early in October, the Speaker about how we could work together on this, and they were going to be coming back with what they wanted in terms of border securities. We're still waiting for that. But let me just say this. One of the rumors, it's not true, but it's true that it's a rumor that's floating around here, is that the president isn't going to sign the bill. That is just not true. The president has never said that. In fact, he said the contrary. He said he would sign the bill. So one of the things that the Dreamers, and I've been meeting with them regularly in two groups yesterday, one of the things they're saying to me is when they're talking to Republicans, they're more courteous now. Their staff is seeing them. Sometimes they see a member. But they're saying, well, this is a hard vote, and if the president vetoes the bill, then why should I go down that path? So that rumor is that the president is going to sign it. I don't believe that. I think we get the votes. We have the votes. We want to vote. We want the Speaker to give us a vote on the floor so that the bill can proceed. And I'm confident that there are many Republicans who would be supportive of the legislation on the floor, and we need to do that. And not spread rumors that it's going to be vetoed, so it's no use you're voting for it. Yes, sir.
Leader, thank you. Question, assuming this bill ends up passing today, what do Democrats plan on doing in the next week? You guys are obviously out of recess next week. What do you guys plan on doing to oppose, as the Senate moves forward with this tax plan? You're talking, rallies in cities,
right.
Protests, that type of thing.
Well, I'm very proud of what has happened leading up until now. We had Action Weekend last week where scores of members and candidates pointed out the bad vote that the Republicans would be making on this, and that was across the country. They'll see more of that. But I have to say that whatever the enthusiasm was then, and it was great, and many of the subjects that are talked about here, the fact that the Senate is now putting in essentially a repeal of a large part of the Affordable Care Act has so energized the outside. And as you know, that mobilization was essential to our defeating their attempt to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act. So you will see, in fact, well, I won't go into our plans, but you will see a great deal of activity springing from this vote. Whether it goes up or down, it's not the end of the day. The Republicans are saying, oh, it's going to be better in the Senate. Oh, really? So the Senate has really electrified energize the base even further than it was before, when we were very proud of what happened last week and last weekend. So there'll be outside mobilization. And any inside maneuvering that we do to keep our caucus unified and the rest and make our statements here is very important. But without outside mobilization, President Lincoln, public sentiment is everything. Yes, sir.
Do you have a timeline for bringing your pension plan to the floor? And how are you going to get Republicans to support that bill?
I think the Republicans, they have a tin ear in many respects, but I don't think they would have a tin ear on this issue, because so many people in their own districts will be suffering greatly. And it's not subjective. It's not a matter of opinion. It's an absolute fact, undeniable, and they'll be hearing from their constituents on this, again, public sentiment, but very direct and personal in those terms. So I think that the votes would be there for the legislation. We'll have to find the legislative path.
I know one of the themes today at your unveiling was no cuts, but would you be willing to agree to some sort of haircut to the pension funds in exchange for some Republicans?
I'm not going to be negotiating that right here. My suggestion to our ranking members was no cuts. Yes, ma'am.
Following up on Mike's question earlier, Speaker Ryan has said he doesn't want to couple DACA with the year-end spending bill. You have said Democrats are not going to leave here without a DACA deal in December. Who do you think relents, and how does this end up playing out? Who has the leverage here?
Again, it's not a negotiation right here in this room, but we have made our statements on the subject. And it is it's kicking the can to next year is just to say we're not doing this. That's how we see that. And we believe, I completely believe that we have the votes within our caucus for sure. It would be a big vote for the Dreamers if he would only give us a vote. So if he wants to take it up as a freestanding or whatever vehicle is leading the station, we'll make some judgments as we go along. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
Can you give us an update on efforts to reach a new fiscal 2018 spending level? I heard from some Republican appropriators that there will not be dollar-for-dollar parity between increases in defense and non-defense discretionary spending. Is that what's going on in negotiations?
Well, we have said we want parity. And conversations have been proceeding. We thought we were going to have a meeting today of the principals, but I don't think the Republicans are ready for that meeting, so it was canceled. But the staff has been working very hard to make sure everybody understands everybody in the subject. We want parity. We're not talking about a particular number, but whatever it is, it will be parity. That's where we are. Yes, sir.
Madam Leader, number of Democrats presented the articles of impeachment yesterday.
Yeah.
Can you comment on that?
On their presenting the articles of impeachment? Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not one to curb anybody's enthusiasm for what they believe in, but right now our focus is in defeating this tax bill, which is a disaster for the country, and if we don't defeat it, that the Republicans know it's a lose-lose situation for them. They'll be selling their middle class down the river, plundering their savings, looting their financial stability, and that's where our fight is. If people want to go do some other things, that's up to them, but that's not where our focus is. Our focus is on that. The public has questions about the fitness of this president to be president, and that's a legitimate discussion. But our focus, our energy, our purpose is to get a better deal for the America's working families. Yes, ma'am.
One more question on the tax bill. If the Senate ends up removing the state and local tax deduction completely, what will that mean in terms of the bill's success?
Do you mean they restore it to the full?
Yes, thank you.
As an original?
Yes.
No, that would be deadly. It would be deadly because what the House did as a compromise has little impact in California, New York, New Jersey, and that's why you see some New York and New Jersey Republican members speaking out against the bill. I don't know what it takes to penetrate the brain of the California Republicans that they don't understand that tens, if not a couple 100,000 of their, over 100,000 of their constituents will be directly impacted with their taxes raised in some cases over $10,000, and we'll be sure that their constituents know that between now and when if the Senate does what it does. But the Senate bill is deadly. As I say, it gives a tax hike to the middle class under $75,000 and a tax break to people to the wealthy, while it guts the Affordable Care Act. 13 million people then would lose their coverage, could lose their coverage. And again, if they return to the state and local, I think that a bill that would have that returning to the House would not succeed, because right now the Republicans are hiding behind the little modification that was made, and that it was all going to get better in the Senate. So this is a defining moment for our country. Who are we here to represent? How do we see our country going into the future? This is about America's working families, which are the backbone of our democracy, of the middle class, and the middle class is the backbone of our democracy. So we feel very responsible to make this fight. And again, I'll have more to say about it on the floor of the House as to one of the things I'm going to say. I'll just tell you this, because I think have they called us back in already? Not yet. They were supposed to call us in at 12:10, so, and then I would speak around now. But just so I have a few minutes, I'll tell you this. What always fascinated me, I did a lot of reading of Pope Benedict. He was a wonderful writer, an intellectual. And in his first encyclical, God is Love, he quotes St. Augustine, who 17 centuries ago said any government that does not exist to promote justice is just a bunch of thieves. He went on to say, Benedict, that sometimes it's hard to define justice. As you make those decisions, he cautioned against the dazzling blindness of money and power. And so when I hear Gary saying, who cares about this, or the big CEOs, they're really excited, or don't call me if you don't pass this bill, say our donors, or, well, the financial contributions will dry up if we don't pass this bill. It sounds very much like what was being cautioned against in that encyclical. It's a stunning thing, and we don't want to be fearmongers, and that's part of our problem. People say you haven't delivered it strongly enough. We don't want to be fearmongers. We just want to be problem solvers and get the job done for the American people. But it's really important for our Republican colleagues to know that the voters understand what the decision is, and that what they are doing is adding trillions to the deficit, hemorrhaging debt in the second 10 years, hemorrhaging debt, and trillions to the deficit, giving big tax breaks to corporate America, equivalent to the tax cuts they're demanding on Medicare and Medicaid, about a $1.5 trillion tax rate advantage to corporations, $1 trillion in cuts in Medicaid, $500 billion cuts in Medicare. So it's equivalent, giving a tax break there and this. At the same time, giving tax breaks to corporations to send jobs overseas. At the same time, saying to individuals, well, you can't have your state and local tax deduction, corporations can. So they're saying to an individual, if you change jobs, your moving expenses are not deductible. But corporations who might change a location, theirs are. So it's a stunning manifesto for the wealthiest people in our country and corporate America. Could we sit down and talk about what is the appropriate tax rate that works for our economy and, in fact, might be an incentive for some corporations to pay their fair share? But that still remains to be seen. But it is what we should be doing in a bipartisan way. So whatever the solution is, that it is sustainable into the future. Anytime we've had these discussions on budget, when I send people into the room, I say, be agnostic, be humble, listen to every suggestion. If something is on the table that creates growth, that generates good-paying jobs, that reduces the debt, that's something we have to consider wherever the idea comes from. So I have to go to the floor now, but thank you all for being here. Yes?
Quick question. Chairman of the Democratic Caucus, Representative Cowley, said Republicans in the House and Ways and Means rejected Democratic amendments during the markup for the tax bill. Do you know what these changes were?
Oh, you're talking about Crowley?
Yes.
That they that they rejected.
Republicans in the House Ways and Means Committee rejected Democratic amendments during the tax bill markup.
Yeah.
Do you know what changes were?
Well, I saw that, yeah, I know that what some of them were, that they related to some of what I talked about here, but one that had a long debate was the tax credit for wind and solar, for renewable energy tax credits. A lot of the Republicans said, I'm all for that, but not right here. Not right here. The issues that relate to teachers and their deductions. But it's a matter of public record. It was a long trip across country to watch that, and that would take me 5 hours to tell you all the things that they rejected. So but it is a matter of public record. It was the public debate that I saw on TV, but it was any good idea that was there for America's working families, any good idea that would reduce the impact on our deficit, on job creation, and any consideration of a better deal. Thank you all very much. Bye-bye.